and welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast Behind the Grind series, where we sit down with one of the best pickleball players in the Fantasy Footballers Home League. You may recognize him from billboards across the country. He is one of the hosts of the Fantasy Footballers and author of My Football Family, available on Amazon. He's the one and only Andy Holloway. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing very well. I'm very thrilled with the introduction. Pickleball is the highest praise you can give me, so thank you.
Now, that seems to be one of those things that's kind of catching on in the fantasy football world. I think Jason was a big proponent of that. I think he's going back and forth. I think it was with Ian Harditz not too long ago about the benefits of pickleball. I work at like a multi-venue recreation facility. We just installed like 30 new pickleball courts right next to. I can't get there yet, even though I'm like 3 hip surgeries and 7 knee surgeries into my career, which means I should be transitioning into pickleball anytime soon.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think it is the transition sport. We used to go play flag football for probably 5, 6, 7 years, and then there was a number of surgeries that people underwent due to playing flag football as you're growing older. So at some point we made the transition. But really, I think we're just addicted to competition, as so many are. It's fun to go out there and try to beat up on one another and act like you're an athlete again.
So when you go out there, there's some pretty impressive older athletes out there. I mean, I don't want to knock them for being senior citizens, but I seen like these 65-year-olds absolutely get after it. I mean, like they were cutthroat. I mean, there was like staring down these younger kids and everything. Like pickleball, it's like almost like prison out there. I mean, there's no rules when it comes down to it.
Yeah, out in the yard. No, my dad is almost 70, and he's a competitive pickleball player. So the idea that you can pick something up and learn it and get better at it, and then, like, God willing, I've got, 30, 40 more years of being able to play it, that'd be that's an attractive part of the game as well, where you don't kind of grow out of it.
So is it just tennis that you don't really run around? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's got aspects of tennis, but with less cardio intensity. Doubles is the predominant way you play. Right. And then, I don't know, like if you've played any other racket sports like racquetball or ping pong, some of those things carry over too. But, it's part athleticism, but not a lot. And then there's just strategy and kind of learning how to play. I mean, if 70, 80-year-olds can compete, it's probably not like tennis. You're not out there on the tennis court.
Well, when the wind blows just right, the scent of Ben Gay comes across the entire country.
That's fair.
A little A535 going on. So if you were coming down to the pickleball courts, this is a championship match there. Maybe you and Jason are getting at it. What's that intro music going to be to get you down to the pickleball court? What's that hype song going to be?
Man, the hype song for Andy Holloway in the pickleball court. I have to tell the guy, I'm the grandpa of the group, so I have to tell him to turn the music down when I'm playing pickleball. It distracts me from the game. They're always jamming it out. I don't know. I'd probably choose some sort of 90s hype music from one of the video games I played back then. I'd probably climb back into one of those EA Sports hype songs or something like that.
So, Andy, I know you've got a bunch of kids out there and whatnot. What is that guilty pleasure song? Because I know you've heard some songs that you've probably heard more than you probably should have heard because, let's be honest, kids have their Disney movies and whatnot. I mean, it's not out of the Goofy movie by any stretch of anyone's imagination, but I'm sure you've heard a song probably more than you want to admit. What is that song that you've been listening to?
Yeah, I'd have to say my kids are not like big, like music fans. They're not jamming to stuff all the time. I would say that the anything from Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift that pops on, I probably like a little bit more than I want to like publicly maybe admit to that. So, my kids have not quite entered that stage of confusing me with their music choices. I think it's coming, like I did with my parents. But yeah, that's probably my answer.
It sounds like the fantasy football theme is Taylor Swift out there is kind of raging throughout the whole fantasy football industry right now.
I've seen some videos. They've gone around to training camps and stuff too and tried to, figure out what players' favorite songs are and all of that. But, it's a spectacle.
Yeah. Andy, talk to us a little bit about how you got into sports, what sports you played as a kid, and how did it help shape you?
Yeah, I mean, sports was something I was drawn to really, really young, especially even the like stats side of it. Grew up in Phoenix. We didn't have we got 4 teams now, but it was the Suns growing up. It was Suns basketball, and kind of idolized Al McCoy, who just retired, longtime announcer for the Phoenix Suns. Listening to games on radio was like way more normal. We didn't have cable. Every single home game, listening on the radio with my dad, collecting basketball cards. Didn't have phones in my hand, or didn't have devices, so I was like obsessing about the back of these cards and memorizing stats. And
Right.
so at an early age, it was like Phoenix Suns basketball and wanting to go be a broadcast announcer. Like that was one of my earliest ambitions. Like I remember doing a school project, and I got the chance to like interview the guy that did the sports segment of the news, and like that was like a big deal to be on the phone with this guy. And so I started out in that kind of journalism world. I played basketball, later played I talked about years of flag football and baseball in high school, but was always drawn to the broadcasting journalism side, writing articles. Went to college. My beginning year, I started as a journalism major, but obviously that industry dynamically changed a lot. Like I thought, I'd be growing up writing editorials for the newspaper that I was getting at every day. No, you're shaking your head because
You got to
it's
write
gone.
a blog. Yeah.
Totally different. But, and so I didn't, that's kind of where I started. And then my life and career changed to doing, I'm a tech guy, kind of front end designer, marketer. And so I did a lot of like game design, marketing stuff for a long time, and just played fantasy football as a hobby. Loved obsessing about the stats, loved all the things we all love about fantasy football, loved driving coworkers crazy with lunchtime conversations about yards per carry for players they didn't care about. And, we just basically just spun up the podcast as a lunchtime kind of muse, basically, and did it just for our league. And that began to, get good feedback. And then we turned it public and blinked, and here we are.
So was it just the Suns that you kind of grew up with? Like, who were some of your favorite players and teams growing up?
Yeah, so we didn't have the Cardinals out here when I was growing up in Arizona. I think they moved here in 88 or 89. So I was a Dan Marino fan, if you're talking NFL. Like, I love the Dolphins, probably because of uniforms or something when I was little. My family was all Dallas fans, America's team. They were always on TV. For the Suns, I grew up watching them from as young as I can remember, and that was the, Kevin Johnson and Dan Marley all the way through the Barkley era. Absolutely. My parents still have a Kevin Johnson growth chart on the back of their door. It has about every one of our ages for me and my siblings. So, like, being out here in Phoenix, if you're born and raised here, you're just like, it's purple and orange.
So you mentioned wanting to go into sports broadcasting and that being the goal. What was it? Let's talk about a decision that changed the trajectory of your life. Was it that decision to transition from, working for a video game company and then going into fantasy football officially?
Yeah, it was kind of forced on us in a lot of ways. That game company was a small business that grew to be very successful. I worked there for 8 years, 30-plus person startup, and then it began to decline. And so I was one of the last people to hang on, like down to 4 people, but it was not going to be around for very long. And Jason and I, believe it or not, we went out and certainly didn't believe we could make a living doing fantasy football media. And so we hedged and we went out and we got real estate licenses, and we're like, okay, we'll do some housing stuff, and then we'll make some side money with the podcast maybe someday. It was kind of forced on us, and we came from a background with the web design and the marketing side where we didn't feel like a lot of that had been applied to the fantasy side yet. And so from day one, when we launched the podcast, we had, some important tenets. We treated it as a business. We applied the disciplines that we had learned in our other industry, with whether it's SEO or marketing or production value, because Mike came from an audio engineering background. And we kind of just made that decision that if this thing's going to happen, we got to go all in. We got to give it, we became year round. No one was doing year round at the time. We figured there were other fantasy football freaks out there that wanted to listen to this all year long. And we just went all in and just kind of committed the amount of time and effort that was necessary. And, we're really thankful and blessed to have a great group of people that work with us and for us now that contributed tremendously to our success, and just very thankful to get to do something we really enjoy.
So along this journey, I mean, was a very unique way of, making it within the fantasy football industry versus working for a sports company, moving around, working your way up, actually starting your own podcast and building it up into this huge business. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen from when you just started it to all the way up now having your own studio? What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen?
Do you mean in the industry or just for us?
Both.
Yeah. I mean, I think the industry as a whole, like when we got into it, at least our perception as brand new faces into the industry was that there were a lot of kind of stalwarts, and the writing side of things was so heavily emphasized. Like we didn't have the level of social media at the time when we entered. I mean, we're going into our 9th season. So if you think back 9 years ago where, TikTok didn't exist and Instagram Reels weren't a thing, and YouTube, it existed, but it wasn't as accessible, right? Now you have the ability to put content out at a moment's notice anywhere. So like for us, the industry at that time was like, Evan Silva was out there writing, and Mike Clay, and like all of these amazing writers, content producers, but it definitely felt like you had to be contributing in that writing area, that the media side, it was ESPN and CBS, and there wasn't a lot of independent production. So I think a lot of that has changed. Like people ask all the time, like, oh, how do I get into that industry? And I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer. Like in some ways there's not an answer to give you, because there's that next evolution of media or technology that, the people at the forefront of that are going to use that to break into the industry. I think in the very beginning we would have been like, okay, you need to go start writing some articles, or you need to find your niche within those articles and then grind. And I don't know if that's the best advice anymore. As the industry has changed, as media has changed, for our show, we had some things at the very beginning that were very important to us, like consistency, people having an expectation as to when the show would come out, what the show's length was going to be, how the segments were going to play out, what the production quality was going to be. We were very committed to being very interactive with listeners, especially early on where, we had the capability of doing that, where you could be one-to-one with so many people. But just having kind of like that game plan of being able to execute a vision, like you do have to have enough of a vision for what you want to do in the space to have the determination to make it through the grinding phase. Because there's always going to be a period of time where you just have to love what you're doing enough to just do it for its own sake. And so whether that is like Matt Harmon, who carved out his, reception perception niche, and that built up his name in the industry, and it was something he was passionate about, or if it's, short form video, long form video, articles, if you love blogs, whatever the case may be, statistical analysis, you just have to love it enough to push through that period of time where you're not going to necessarily have financial reward for doing it. You just got to love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you've kind of been in this industry for a while now. Actually, your show was actually one of the first shows that I was watching when I was really getting into the fantasy thing. I mean, I was playing for a while, but when I started searching the web and I found you guys, I was like, hey,
nice.
They sound like me. But you've had to have a lot of memorable moments going on throughout this journey. Does anything kind of stick out? What pops to your head?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely been a handful. One of them that for sure is near the top of the list was the first live event we ever did. We did like a 5-city tour in, I think, 2019, and just doing live shows in venues. And I believe our first show was out in Minnesota. And, just having, when you walked out on stage and there's like 300 people in the room and they're all losing their minds over fantasy football, it was the most surreal thing we could have ever imagined. I think Jason was like crying on stage because he was just so overcome with like what in the world are we doing? Like, why do we get, it was just so humbling, and it's such a moment to kind of like level set how far we had come as a show, and to get to enjoy that with people and see them face to face. Like, you can get download numbers in a spreadsheet, but that's not one-to-one. That's not sitting there taking a picture with somebody. That's not getting to talk with somebody and like, oh, okay, these are the people listening to the show. This is what the show's all about. This brings them joy. Like, that's a very rewarding thing that, if we can make people smile for a little while every day, being a positive influence in the industry is very important to us. So that was definitely one of the biggest moments, I think, for us, was just being able to sit back for a second and say, like, wow, like, people have really connected with this show. We don't always know why. We are three dads that have some bad humor at times, but people have connected to the show, and we're so thankful for that. I think that one sticks out the most.
You guys should change the name of the show to Three Dads.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely rung more true the older we've gotten,
Right.
So.
Well, speaking of being a dad and kind of making it in the industry, one person who's going to be very fortunate that you've made it in the industry is probably your son, because now he doesn't have to share the studio/bedroom, and he doesn't have to worry about Mike and Jason, yourself in there with a tiny little air conditioner with holes poked in the door and a light that says on air. So he's going to be really happy to have his own room now that you guys got your own studio.
Yeah, no question. And my oldest, who is he'll be 15 this year, is a tech head himself. So getting to play around with the technology we have at the studio now, and coming, he's that YouTube generation, right? Where everyone wants to be a YouTube star. So I'm sure he's enjoyed getting to tinker with the new technology.
Isn't that the truth? I sit here and I record a show and I cut it and I edit it and I do all this stuff. It takes me multiple hours after. Meanwhile, my son does like this Roblox type video, does it on his phone. He's like posted it within seconds. And of course, it's more popular than anything that I could put out there.
Yeah, that's how it works now. All right, Matt. That's easy. Just at this point, I just say, we get something new, and I used to be the smart one, and now I'm just like, just set it up. You could do it faster. It's like, it's just how it works.
Man, you guys are talking like you're 100 years old right now.
Isn't that true? I'm like, it's the most dad talking stuff ever.
Get off my lawn, like you guys are there.
I'm not even 40 yet, but my son has passed me.
Man.
You know what I mean?
I'm older than everybody in this room, and you guys sound old right now.
I've been known to say "get off my lawn" a few times here.
Yeah,
so,
it just happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that kind of resonated with me here, and you talk about being a positive influence. One of the things that the fantasy footballers have done has been positive from the top down. I think that's you, Jason, Mike, your interaction with the community and whatnot. One of the things that kind of really caught my attention is I think it was you that said fantasy football is more than money. One thing that we have in common, it's not pickleball yet, is the fact that we've both fostered and adopted children. Me and my wife, I think through our foster system, had about 120 kids come through since we started, and we've adopted some children along the way. Just going to talk about what the whole adoption process and adding someone new to your family means to you and your wife and your sons, and then how that ties into my football family, because I know that's a book you're very proud of.
Yeah. When my wife and I got married, we just celebrated 17 years last week, or actually 3 days ago. But thank you. And from the time we got married, we knew that adoption was going to be a part of our story at some point in time. Just having a heart for, in particular, I think our story is around having a heart for mothers that are in very difficult situations and having to make those very tough decisions about carrying a baby to term and finding a trustworthy family to raise their child. And so that was kind of our heart from the beginning. I've had a lot of people ask me about adoption over the years, and you are intimately familiar with the fact that everybody's story is completely different. And that's kind of like the first thing I tell anybody is like, oh, what's it like, or what's that process like? And it's like, I know a couple things. There'll be a ton of like twists and turns in the road, and I know that your story will be completely different than ours. And, that was something that we knew early on was going to be the case. So that wasn't necessarily intimidating, but it was definitely true. And we have some close friends they run a foster and adoption agency. And so for us, it was nice to be able to lean on people that had been that had gone through those processes and could help inform and teach us. And, we needed to learn and still need to learn every day in that process. So that was kind of the heart of it. And to get back to what you were saying about the positive side, I think we're all three of us at the top of this company have the same kind of like cadence to life and priorities systems. So it was very helpful because, I've been a part of businesses where, maybe the owners of the company have totally different worldviews and totally different perspectives on what success is defined as. And so thankfully I have two partners here that, we all have 3 kids. We're all the same ages. We all have certain priorities that we want to be there for them. We're going to conform the business around that and not the other way around. And so that meant that there would not be a lot of conflict and hasn't been conflict as we matured the brand and grew. And so the book just came out of that, this idea that, I felt like when we first got into the industry, there's almost this basement culture where it's like, okay, the game's on, so dad's going to run to the basement, watch with his friends, and like when he's done, he'll come back up and be with the kids or something, or that sports betting, underground kind of ideal. And I'm not saying everybody treated it that way. I'm just saying that was a perception that was out there. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it was like, this is about fun, entertainment. This can be something that the entire family can be involved in, that they can all enjoy. There's nothing that brings me more excitement than sitting down with my son and, going crazy when Austin Eckler scores a touchdown because he's got him on his team. And that was my experience with my dad. Like I talked about the Suns earlier. It was like, what are my best memories growing up? It's like, okay, I'm laying on the floor listening to the radio when the Suns hit a 3 to win a playoff game with my dad. And so it was a family experience for us, and that was modeled for me. And so that's very much what I think is important for this space, that people can kind of say, okay, it's not all about money. It's not all about sports betting. It's not all about, hiding away and going and doing what you want to do away from the family. It's just more about, integrating everybody into that process if they want to. So that's kind of the heart behind it. And so that was a fun project to work on and be able to kind of convey.
I like the integration of family, kids, everybody in fantasy football. What's something else that fantasy football has taught you about yourself?
Wow, that's a good question. I think when you have a personality that really takes the stats and football and all of that stuff, you could easily become obsessed, and it's like, it can be so enjoyable that you can spend every minute of every day wanting to obsess about it. And that's certainly how I used to treat it. And so I think as I've become older and my kids have gotten older, I think I've learned to compartmentalize that in a healthy way. Try to make the most of the time that you spend on those things, but try to live a more balanced existence in this world. And, as someone who has that personality that can be obsessed, I think over time I've learned how to better manage that, I guess.
I like that.
So we know about lists, right? Right now, everyone, it's like pre-football season. Everyone's coming out with their top 5 running backs, wide receivers, et cetera, et cetera. I like to do things a little bit different here because I'm not quite ready to dive into football quite yet. As a ice cream enthusiast, a self-proclaimed ice cream enthusiast, it's right there in the bio.
That's fair.
What are the top 5 ice creams for Andy Holloway? What are the top 5?
This is troublesome because I don't want to betray a different
Don't get
flavor.
booed either. Do not get booed. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, cookies and cream's number 1.
Okay.
Okay, wait, you just said go ahead, and then you had a reaction like that?
Yeah, because you started off with like the worst one, but keep going. It's your list.
Worst one. No. Let's
this
debate it. What makes it bad? Do you not like cookies?
Because I'm mint chocolate chip. Like
mint chocolate chip was going to be next. You just needed to wait a second.
I'm going to wait. That's what I said. Proceed.
Mint chocolate chip is up there. That's number 2. Cookie dough's 3. You go beyond that, I'll throw Rocky Road in the 4 or 5 somewhere. Just to get a chocolate base in there. I know. I'd be vanilla base most often. But I'm not going to go any of the defaults because those are good with everything. I think Rocky Road gets in there. What am I forgetting? Fill in the blanks for me.
You got Rocky.
Those are core. You could do like a
cream.
Yeah, cookies and cream's 101. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like a chocolate vanilla swirl. Maybe you get that in there. Maybe you get everything else is too complex. You've got all the Ben and Jerry's and They got too many chunks of
Too
stuff
many
in there.
names.
You can overwhelm the ice cream with too many. Like, I don't need to eat a candy bar in the ice cream.
Right.
Keep it smooth. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
See, Andy, I'm cheap. So the more things you can put in the ice cream, the better I feel. The more I feel
You
like
think
I
it's a
want
better
cookies and cream.
value? Now, see, that's an
Yeah.
old thing to say right there.
Right.
You got
That
cookies
was
and
the
cream.
garage sale mentality.
Exactly. That's
But it actually costs
that's the whole
more,
dad
like,
in me.
because they
You got
weigh it
cookies and
down.
cream.
That's
Right.
right.
You said cookies and cream. You get the cookies and you get the cream. Mint chocolate, you get the mint and you get the chocolate. Bubblegum ice cream, you get the ice cream and you get the bubblegum.
Whoa, I don't
mean,
know
you
about
get-
the bubble gum.
The
You
bubble
lost
gum,
me at
that's
bubble gum.
like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on,
But
It's like
I
a
I
got
didn't say it was
velvet
mature.
would be nice.
those four are pretty. I'm pretty happy with those.
Matt. Nice. Yeah, I mean, strawberries always like my mix is mint chocolate chip strawberry together. Like that's my
You
mix.
like a Neapolitan? Like do you want one of the triples? You don't
Yeah,
mind that?
that's one of
Okay.
my favorites right there, dude. There you go. But let's get back to some serious business, I guess. Uh, give us one piece of advice that you would give to anyone trying to find their way through this industry, and then also give us your best parenting advice.
You guys are hitting me with hard ones here. Best advice for working through the industry. No one will connect. Okay, I got it. Connection. If you connect with people, I think you'll have success in the industry. So if you prioritize connection, I think that is a good starting point. And connection cannot happen without authenticity. Everything that makes you weird, everything that makes you, if people don't see it, they can't connect with you. They can't connect with an avatar that's trying to be somebody that they're not. It's not a genuine connection. They might say, I like your stats. Thanks for giving me those stats. But that's not a lasting audience member. That's not somebody that has an affection or a feeling towards you and your brand that has any staying power. Because I can draw stats off of this tweet and that tweet, and it doesn't, what difference does it make? So to me, it's like connection with the people that you're trying to bring value to. And to me, that is the longest potential. That's the best way to build a long-term value. It's the best way to have people support you. Is authenticity and people connecting with you. And like, also I this one's harder to say out loud, but like you need to be realistic at some point. A lot of people grind in this space, and sometimes what you're doing and specifically isn't going to work out. And so maybe that means you make a pivot to something else in the space that needs a voice. I mean, we've been around enough people that have kind of done the exact same thing for like 6, 7, 8 years, and then they become embittered and frustrated and think the industry owes them something, or that people just aren't paying attention. And like, to me, the hard truth of that is that like the market told you the truth about what you're going through. It wasn't maybe in demand enough, or you weren't meeting a need. Like, being humble enough to just listen to that and not think that you're automatically providing something that people want is probably the hardest real advice I could ever give, because I don't want to see people spin their wheels without making adjustments. So those would be a couple things I think in the industry that are true, very true.
Nice. And give us some parenting advice. We all have kids, all different
Yeah.
ages.
Do you all have kids?
Yeah, well, I have a 20-year-old daughter who's actually leaving the house, getting her own apartment August
Wow.
1st. So that's like
I'll get advice from you on the older ones soon. But
yeah.
But for me, I think I've learned so much about my weaknesses through having kids and growing up and learning that, my best advice for people is like, be very patient, become a patient person. It'll save a lot of problems because that's not my tendency. Another one would be like, don't sweat stupid small stuff. I did a lot of that early with kids. It was like, making, the mountain out of a molehill type of situation where it's like, you look back to the early days, and I wish I could take away every moment that I cared about stupid stuff and just get rid of it. So, I think that's the best advice I would give, is just be patient, present, and forget about the small stuff.
Great advice.
I like that. I mean, Peter Schrager once said I was the Philip Rivers of the North, or Philip Rivers was the American Matt Donnelly. I think we're at 11 kids here right now.
Wow.
And you're right. The more kids you have, the less concerned you happen to be. You know what I mean? It's
Oh,
you
yeah.
baby-proof everything the first kid. By the kid number 10, 11, it's like, they'll take care of themselves.
You
There's
can't
something will
tell
happen there.
you can't tell a brand new parent not to be paranoid.
Right.
There's no people told me that before I had a kid, and I was paranoid. You know, it's like it's just part of growing up as a dad or mom, I think. But yeah, when the second kid came along, better perspective. When the third came along, better perspective. So yeah, it's a ride. That's for sure.
It's all about perspective out there, not only in fantasy football, but in real life. And one of the things that combines the two right now, and I'm just going to leave this on this note, is that ultimate draft kit right now that you can go get over at the Fantasy Footballers. I think you guys just released this a couple weeks ago. It's something that you guys work really hard on. So just to kind of close out today's show, just kind of give everyone a little bit of something regarding the UDK.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean it's kind of our baby every summer is just spending time and resources trying to give everybody something really enjoyable to accompany their draft. And we'll put all the rankings and the sleepers and breakouts, and this year we have so much content. Like as the team's grown, I think we have literally like a Harry Potter book worth of original content in there this year. We did the word count test. I don't think it's one of those later books. I think it's one of the early books, but that's still a lot of words of content. So it's definitely a passion project. We always want to make it a little bit better every year, and it's something that our listeners enjoy, and hopefully it adds a lot of fun to your draft season.
Well, Andy, on that note, we have had a lot of fun sitting down, talking with you, going behind the grind. With that being said, I know you got a lot of things going on. Appreciate your time here this week, and hopefully we can do this again. So for Major, for Tara, for Andy, I'm Matt Donnelly, and this has been Behind the Grind on the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Peace.